The Great Chicago Fire didn't begin with a roar. It began with something almost too small to notice. A spark, a flicker, a glow behind a wooden wall. Sunday night, October 8, 1871. A warm, dry wind moved through the poorest district of the city, place of cramped alleys, wooden sheds, and crowded barns. Chicago had been growing faster than anyone could plan for. And like most fast-growing cities, it was built of the cheapest, quickest material available: wood. Wood for the houses, wood for the sidewalks, wood for the shops, the stables, the fences, a city waiting for a spark. And when that spark finally came, Chicago discovered that fire does not need permission to rewrite a city. But this story isn't just about flames. It's about the man who saw what others couldn't, the one officer who understood how quickly the fire would spread, and how many firefighters would die if they stayed. His name was Matthias, Chicago Fire Marshal. A veteran of dozens of blazes, a man with a calm voice, sharp instincts, and a reputation for doing what was necessary, even when it wasn't popular. He was about to face the worst night of his life. When the first alarms rang, most of the city barely reacted. Fires happened all the time. In a city made of timber, it was almost routine. But when Benner arrived at the scene, something felt wrong. The wind was too strong, the heat too intense, the flames too fast. He watched the fire jump a 30-foot gap as if the air itself were burning. Sparks flew across rooftops like angry insects. Shingles burst into flame without being touched. A barn collapsed before firefighters could even unroll their hoses. Benner didn't waste time shouting. He took one long breath, then said quietly to the nearest captain, "This fire isn't local. It's a city fire." The captain froze. Everyone knew what that meant: a blaze large enough to outrun the fire department, a disaster where strategy mattered more than bravery, and where every minute wasted meant more dead men. Benner began moving through the chaos, his boots kicking up ash, his coat glowing orange with reflected heat. He didn't look at the flames, he looked at the wind. He watched how it curved around buildings, how it bent sparks upward, how it pushed roaring lines of fire toward the heart of the city. And with a certainty he would never forget, he realized something horrifying. The fire was going to jump the river. Most firefighters refused to believe it. Rivers were natural fire breaks. Everyone knew that. But Benner saw the sparks blowing horizontally, like bullets. He knew that if the flames crossed the water, the fire would hit the lumber district, and once it reached that mountain of dry timber, the city would have fewer hours left than anyone imagined. He turned to the officers gathered behind him. "Pull your men back, now." They stared at him, confused. Retreat, when half the city was watching, when people were shouting for help, when buildings were collapsing in front of them. Firefighters were trained to move forward. Benner was telling them to do the opposite. One captain protested. "Marshal, we can contain it," Benner snapped, louder than anyone had heard him speak. "No, you cannot. If you stay here, you'll die here." The other officers went silent. They trusted him, so they followed his order. It saved dozens, maybe hundreds of lives, because minutes later, a sheet of flame carried by wind, hunger, and a terrifying momentum leapt across the river. Exactly as Benner had warned, an entire row of lumberyards ignited at once, like gunpowder. The city groaned under the sound of the explosion. Chicago's fate was sealed. The night grew worse. Blocks burned in minutes. Streets twisted from the heat. The sky glowed red with smoke so thick it hid the moon. Families ran with whatever they could carry: a child, a Bible, a blanket, stumbling over burning boards, coughing, crying, trying to stay ahead of the firestorm. Benner moved through all of it. He was not a hero in the cinematic sense. He wasn't dragging people from flames or carrying bodies over his shoulder. His mission was different, quieter, and in many ways, more difficult. He had to keep his firefighters alive. He found groups of exhausted men battling impossible flames and ordered them out. Some resisted, pride and duty pushing them to continue, but Benner forced them to retreat anyway. More than once he physically pulled men by their collars. "Not here. Fall back. Move to the North Line now." He was fighting not the fire, but the instincts of his own department. And he knew why. Firefighters would die for strangers. They'd walk into a burning house without thinking. But on this night, bravery could get them all killed. The fire was no longer a fire. It was a weather system. Something alive, something growing, something deciding its own path. And Benner understood the truth no one wanted to admit. The city could burn, but the fire department had to survive. By midnight, the fire was a wall of destruction moving north. Churches collapsed in showers of sparks. Hotels burned with people still inside. Bridges melted. Streets buckled. Stone buildings cracked from heat. Benner reorganized his scattered units, forming moving lines of retreat, leapfrogging north, then farther north, always staying one street ahead of the inferno. He watched firefighters' faces covered in soot, their eyes red from smoke, their hands burned from hot metal. He saw men fall from exhaustion, caught only because another firefighter grabbed them before they hit the ground. And still, not one of them quit. Bender felt something tighten in his chest, pride, fear, and grief, all at once. He shouted his orders with hoarse urgency: keep moving, regroup at the next block, protect the waterworks, leave the structure, it's gone. But even as he coordinated the retreat, he knew what was coming. The waterworks, the heart of Chicago's firefighting system, was going to fall. If the fire reached it, hydrants would run dry. The city would lose its last defense. He ran ahead to evaluate the situation. When he turned the corner, he saw it. The wooden roof of the pumping station had caught a stray ember. For a moment, he simply stared. It was over. The firestorm hit the building like a hammer. The roof lit up like paper. And then, one by one, every hydrant in the city began to lose pressure. Firefighters lifted hoses and watched water turn into a drizzle. Some cried. Some swore. Some just stood there in shock. Benner swallowed hard. It was the worst moment of his career, but not his last decision. He turned to the nearest officer, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said, "Get them to safety. We save who we can." His voice didn't break, not once. By morning, Chicago was unrecognizable. A third of the city was gone. An estimated 100,000 people were homeless. Blocks were reduced to glowing ash. Smoke hung over the ruins like fog. But the fire department, bruised, burned, exhausted, was alive. Because Benner had forced them to retreat. Because he had seen what others couldn't. Because he understood that the city needed survivors more than martyrs. In the months that followed, investigations began. And something unusual happened. A pattern emerged. Dozens of testimonies from firefighters all said the same thing. If Marshal Benner had ordered us back, we would have died. He never asked for recognition. He never boasted. He never called himself a hero. He simply said, "I did what the fire demanded," but the department knew better. Today, Matthias Benner is not as famous as other figures from the Great Chicago Fire. He has no statue in the city, no movies, no dramatic speeches passed down through generations. His heroism was quieter. Just a man who saw the future of a disaster before anyone else did, and made choices that others were afraid to make. He saved dozens of lives in hundreds of small moments, each decision a barrier against the firestorm. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is to turn your back on the flames. Not to flee them, but to keep the people behind you alive. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of quiet heroism as powerful as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you won't find in the history books. See you next time.